Binks Sake is the story of Joy Boy, one that was masterfully implemented by Oda, and we've recently seen a lot of what's actually being described in the lyrics coming to fruition in the modern day, which threatens to simultaneously spoil the long-awaited history of Joy Boy, as well as the much longer-awaited future of Luffy. It is a stupidly good song. And who wrote Binks Sake? Why, that would be Eiichiro Oda, which isn't usually the case for iconic One Piece songs, even in the manga. For example, Let's Go See Master Nekomamushi, the song sung by Brook in chapter 814, was written by Brook's voice actor Cho, and it was written long before Oda even planned to have the Nekomamushi character, who was drawn specifically as a result of Cho's song. And even further back, the Socket King theme that first appears in chapter 368 was created by Usopp's voice actor Kappa Yamaguchi. Oda doesn't tend to write songs that make it into the manga. Instead, they're often quirky additions offered by those around him. Mostly gags, but Binks Sake is intentional. Oda sat down and he penned this for a reason. And something that's been very evident with Binks Sake from the beginning is that it's a song that is meant to connect the past to the present. In fact, when the song is first sung in its entirety at the end of Thriller Bark, it's used as a connection between the past and present as well. It continuously dips in and out of 50 years ago and modern day, and in a way that we've never seen before or since in One Piece. We see segments of Brook's tragedy with the Rumbar Pirates, singing the song on the verge of death, and we frequently cut between that and the Straw Hats singing and dancing to the song in present day, victorious having just beaten Gecko Moria and emerged from the long night of Thriller Bark. And the lyrics of the song actually reflect Brook's personal journey, because the general story presented within Binks Sake is one of setting out to adventure, making a home for yourself on the sea, but then, oh no, problems happen, big problems, so big that we all end up as bones in the end, which is quite literal in Brook's case. But Binks Sake also ends quite ominously with a line about the moon rising a long night, and Brook proceeded to spend 50 years in the darkness of the Florian Triangle, with Luffy's arrival being his own personal dawn of the world. And much like Joy Boy, Brook also left a promise unfulfilled. In the same way that Joy Boy couldn't keep his promise to the Mermaid Princess, Brook couldn't keep his promise to Laboon. However, we're now in a modern day situation to right that. This goes beyond Brook though, so far beyond. Because I genuinely believe that Binks Sake is not only the tale of Joy Boy's life, but a very bittersweet one created after his departure from this world, a very peppy funeral dirge. And we're going to go through the song line by line because holy crap, with what we know now, this song is probably one of the biggest open spoilers in the series. But first, we need to address a little issue of translation. Binks Sake, or Binks's Brew as the song is known in English, is an incredibly different song to the original Japanese. And admittedly, the lyrics do sound quite nice in English, but that is very much the problem. When this was translated, the only focus was on creating a nice sounding song. And there was no way of knowing just how integral the literal Japanese meaning would be. And you can see this as early as the title Binks's Brew instead of Sake, which is problematic because sake is incredibly important in One Piece, and it has been shown on multiple occasions to be the vehicle through which the bonds of friendship, respect, and even brotherhood are formed. So just by changing the title, you're already omitting the heart of the song. And there's some very interesting publication reasons behind this. The first 64 volumes of One Piece were translated across at least 9 different entities. And a big part of this is because there was a point in Viz history where they conducted a great speed up of the One Piece manga. They were trying to rapidly and desperately crank out like 20 volumes in a year so that they could catch up to the Japanese releases. Because One Piece was all of a sudden becoming very big in the West, and Viz were not ready for that explosion. And during this endeavor, Viz had to outsource the majority of their translations. For example, volume 50, where Binks Sake first appears, isn't even credited as being translated by a human being. It was a translation outsourced to a group called JN Productions. And what I'm trying to get at here is that this was a very different time to the Stephen Paul era, which is volume 65 onwards, where we now have a single consistent translator who has intimate knowledge of One Piece. That's not what this is at all. Back in this day, the translator was an outsourced contractor doing a gig and probably had minimal or even no knowledge of One Piece, and almost certainly translated Binks Sake with the goal in mind of just making it sound good in English. There was very little, if any, thought to the idea that this song could contain hidden meaning. For example, the second verse in the officially translated English starts with, "Bid farewell to Weaver's Town, say so long to Port Renown," which are good lyrics. They flow nicely together and they're very easy to sing. However, they bear almost no resemblance to what's actually being sung in Japanese, which is, "Farewell to the harbor, to my old hometown. Let's all sing out with a dawn as the ship sets sail." Definitely doesn't flow as well. But that dawn is a very important concept in One Piece. The dawn is made up of 2 katakana that Oda uses very frequently for particularly dramatics and panels, indicating the sound of a drum, a don. and it's also part of the sound that forms the drums and indeed the heartbeat of liberation that was possessed by Joy Boy and now Luffy. With what we know now, the Don is a clear reference to Joy Boy and or the Sun God Nika, but you won't see that in the official English, which is why we're not using the officially translated lyrics for this video. A better translation does exist on the Binks Sake One Piece wiki page, but to be honest, even that one is quite lacking in some very key lines. And for said key lines in this video, I'm going to be referring to the more literal translation by Manu from the Ohara channel. He's done a lot of the heavy lifting here with all the language and the fact checking. He actually lives in Japan, so I trust him a lot more than me. He's made a video on this as well, which you can check out in the description below. But as a quick example of why he needed to go to this effort, the concept of singing is mentioned 3 times in the song. At the end of verse 1, the birds sing as they draw circles in the sky. Then in the middle of verse 2, let's all sing out with a dawn as the ship sets sail. And during the final verse, let's all sing it with a dawn, a song of waves. So I've looked at this song a lot over the years, but this is something that I didn't even notice until Manu pointed it out. And that's because in that final line, a song of the waves, is not actually the most accurate translation. Instead, the lyric Unaba no Uta would be song of the deep sea. And with that clarification, I think a couple of you may have just had a oh my god moment, because now what we have is a song of the sky, a song of the deep sea, and a song of a ship sailing. Not at all unlike the 3 ancient weapons, one of which resides in the sky, another of which in the deep sea, and the other one, Pluton, is a ship that sails the seas. And if not an overt reference to the ancient weapons themselves, it is at the very least commentary on the primary societies that knew of Joy Boy and the Sun God Nika. That is one example of the many revelations that this song contains. So let's look at this song line by line from the perspective that it is retelling the life of Joy Boy. Going to deliver Binks' sake, following the sea breeze, riding on the waves, far across the salty depths, the merry evening sun, the birds sing as they draw circles in the sky. So this first verse is Romance Dawn. Joy Boy is being called to adventure, and something very poignant is that most literally the Japanese translates as following the sea breeze, having the freedom to do what you want. So the idea is that Joy Boy, like Luffy, grew up on a dull and quiet or exciting but closed off island somewhere, which may or may not have been the ancient kingdom, and he heard the call to adventure, a call which came, quote, far across the salty depths and from the merry evening sun. And given that Joy Boy is heavily hinted to have possessed the same devil fruit as Luffy, this is the sheer freedom lust of the sun god Nika manifesting, and then when Joy Boy does set off, the birds sing as they draw circles in the sky. The sky rejoices that the sun has set out on its very bright adventure. Now in his video, Manu also suggests that this could be referencing Joy Boy activating the ancient weapon Uranus, because this is the part of the song that could be referring to that part of the trio. And it is powered by the Mother Flame, although Joy Boy's heartbeat has also been shown to power the ancient tech, and he leans into this quite heavily, maybe too heavily as the song goes on. I personally don't necessarily agree, but it could be. But more importantly, verse 2. Farewell to the harbor, to my old hometown. Let's all sing out with a dawn as the ship set sail. Waves of gold and silver dissolve to salty spray as we all set out to the ends of the sea. Again, this is Romance Dawn, and the dawn, that dawn is the drum of liberation setting sail. And according to Manu, the waves of gold and silver are more literally rather florid references to the light of the sun and the moon, 2 very key motifs in One Piece. And I here personally believe that these waves are referencing the emergence of a battle to be described later on in the song. You've got hints about both light and darkness sparkling about on the sea. Nothing major is happening yet, but events have been set in motion. And going with the ancient weapon theory, this verse also tells us of Joy Boy potentially awakening Pluton. Manu then has a bit of a complicated theory about how Joy Boy accidentally awakened these weapons and was himself responsible for the sea levels rising. And then he also comes to the conclusion that Joy Boy was Imu's brother. Gonna be honest, I don't quite follow him that far. And from here on out, both he and I have quite different interpretations of what the song means. But again, if you want to hear him out, there's a link to do so. But for now, verse 3. Going to deliver Binks' sake. We are pirates sailing through the sea. The waves are our pillows, the ship our roost. Flying the proud skull on our flags and our sails. So this verse is probably the peak of Joy Boy's life. It simply describes the sheer happiness of being free. And it does this through the metaphor of waves and ships representing a bed, aka a home. The whole world is his home. Maximum freedom. And it might sound a bit mundane, but this is just the calm before the storm referenced in the next verse. Now comes a storm through the far off sky. Now the waves are dancing, beat upon the drums. If you lose your nerve, this breath could be your last. But if you hold on, the morning sun will rise. Now the waves dancing is a bit mind-blowing because that has taken on a whole new and shockingly literal meaning recently, because we have quite literally seen waves dancing to the beat of drums in the manga recently. In chapter 1000 1118, when Luffy and Bonnie activated their respective sun god forms, the beat of liberation was so strong that it affected the waves around them, resulting in this panel where it looks like both the ship and the waves are literally dancing as best they can, which is bizarrely understandable because even Dory and Rocky were hit with this overwhelming desire to dance in this extremely dire moment. So this verse may not be metaphorical at all, but problems are beginning. There's a large storm brewing in the far-off sky, something that, we're gonna need to deal with. And right here is the make or break moment of the Void Century. After this verse, things take quite a tragic turn, just as history inevitably did. But within this verse, there is equal danger and equal hope. Yes, there's a huge storm brewing, but if we just hold on, the morning sun will rise. And they weren't necessarily wrong, but that sunrise would end up being about 800 years later than everyone would have liked. And this verse could in fact be referring to Luffy. We pass the song through the generations and emphasize that if we just hold on, the morning sun will eventually rise. But now, verse 4, going to deliver Binks' sake. Today and tomorrow, our dreams through the night. Waving our goodbyes, we'll never meet again. But don't look so down, for tomorrow, the night moon will also rise. And this verse is, it's quite depressing. It tells of a great loss. We're waving our goodbyes, never to meet again. At the very least, it's very bittersweet. And we may even have seen one of these goodbyes recently in chapter 1122, with Joy Boy leaving his hockey rope with Emmett, knowing that he would soon be gone. But this verse also states that the night and the moon will also rise, so this is the beginning of the long night of the world that we've been living in for the past 800 years. The 20 kingdoms have won, the vast majority of the planet has now sunk into the dark depths of the new ocean, and they are simply laying there dormant, waiting for the morning sun to rise, for the dawn of the world. But not all is lost, because we do have one final verse. Going to deliver Binks' sake, let's sing it with a don, a song of the waves. Doesn't matter who you are, someday you'll just be bones. Never ending, ever wandering, our funny traveling tale. So that last part in particular is Waraibanashi, which can also be translated literally as laugh tale. Never ending, ever wandering, our laugh tale. And it's almost certainly the reason why Roger names the island he found Laugh Tale. It was after this song. But what really strikes me in this final verse is the declaration that let's all sing it with a don, which I believe could be referring to the song itself and its importance of being passed down with the will of Joy Boy or even the will of Nika. Sing it with a don, pass that drum beat down, so that one day it can serve its purpose. And I do think that this song was created to pass down history, like what almost every real-world human society did prior to written history. The events of the past were transmitted through oral tradition, which, yes, it does sound like an STI, and you know what? It should, because these songs, these stories, these poems, they infected and embedded themselves in the minds of the next generation. And in this case, a song just so happens to be the one thing that the world government could not erase from history. Any written or physical record of these events outside of the poneglyphs could be dealt with, but they could not remove oral history. And so now this song has been passed down for 800 years, carrying both the tragedy and the hope of Joy Boy. But the song isn't necessarily a strictly linear history of Joy Boy. I think it definitely has a double meaning, both telling the story of what happened as well as the story of what now must happen. For example, with the aforementioned singing lines in the sky, the deep sea, and the ship at sea level, this could be describing each respective society mourning the loss of Joy Boy and or celebrating his legacy, because eventually Binks' sake describes the whole world singing. The song of the sky, the song of the deep sea, and the song of the surface. And even though it's incredibly tragic, it's not just about the loss of Joy Boy. It's also about the inevitability of mortality, the importance of enjoying the adventure while it lasts, and regardless of the outcome, leaving this world with a smile on your face and a don in your heart. And so there really could be no better song to pass through the generations.